Love him or hate him, Oli Marmol is going to be the Cardinals manager in 2025. But should he be? Did he really do that bad of a job in 2024? Let's discuss it on today's episode of Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Cardinals fans. I'm JD Haffern, and I'm a national radio sports anchor, born and raised in the Lou, and a lifetime Cardinals fan, and I'm your host for Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. You can follow me on Twitter, X at JD Sports Radio. You can follow the podcast at LO_Cardinals. I want to thank those of you who make Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment, interact with us, and hit that notification button so you know when new episodes are posted. This is a show serving Cardinal Nation and giving the best fans in baseball all of the info about the birds on the bat. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so we're going to get into some fan feedback later on in this episode, things that you guys have written to me on YouTube, but I wanted to start things off with discussing Oli Marmol, manager of your St. Louis Cardinals. Oli, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, right, over his 3-year career so far. It's been tumultuous since the get-go, really, because he had to take over for a very unique situation where the Cardinals fired Mike Shildt, who was doing a pretty good job at the helm of the team. He was winning ball games. He had won a Manager of the Year award. He was up for the award again the year he got canned. His one knock really was that he didn't really have a lot of success in the playoffs. Then the philosophical differences came down, and then he was out, just like that, which was pretty jarring and unexpected for, I think, everyone involved. I mean, obviously, it caught Mike Shildt off guard. He did not expect that, but it was a decision that was made. And I think if Shildt had been losing more than he was winning, like if it was more around a 500 record, kind of like it was this past year, I think it would have made his firing a little more easier for all of us. Well, I don't think we would have understood it still, but it would have been an easier pill to swallow. But because it had to do with things that were off the field, it became confusing to fans. So in steps Oli Marmol, right? 35 years old, youngest manager in Major League Baseball, to take over a team that had playoff aspirations, obviously, but was also just chock full of veteran leadership that year in 2022. You know, he had Yachty, and he had Ueno, and Goldie, and Nato, and Pujols, and they win 93 games. And they have that quick exit against the Phillies in that opening round where, you know, Helsley comes in and ends up blowing that lead. And that was coming off the injured finger, remember? And that had happened at the end of the year, so we didn't know how healthy he was. And it became a mess, and the Phillies end up taking off and having a big run in the postseason that year. Next year, a lot of changes, right? Gone are the hitting coach, Jeff Albert, and his veteran pitching coach, Mike Maddox. Despite the Cardinals at least telling us that they wanted to bring those guys back, both of them decided to go elsewhere. Gone were your team captains and the soul of the team in Yachty and Albert. Ueno comes back, but he's a shell of his former self due to injuries, and you saw that at the end of 2022 where he just fell apart, and then it just never really got any better, except for a couple of games here and there, specifically his 200th win. Obviously went well. The pitching was a mess altogether. The team ERA was 4.79. They had the second highest batting average against that year at 276. You had the new catcher and Wilson Contreras coming in, but, you know, that whole mess of like, well, we're going to stop him from catching. We're going to talk about moving him to left field. I really don't feel like those were Oli decisions being made there. I feel like that was coming from above. The offense was decent in 2023, but Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson hurt most of the year. Goldie regresses from those MVP numbers, which we knew it was probably going to happen. But you ended up with guys like Taylor Motter and Richie Palacios and Trace Barrera, Oscar Mercado. These are some of the names that were filling in for a decent amount of time on that team. It was really bad. And then they end up having to trade Jack Flaherty, Jordan Montgomery, Chris Stratton, Jordan Hicks, Genesis Cabrera. All of them get shipped out. And to me, this was actually kind of the beginning of this rebuild. I know that we think that it's starting in 2025, but I feel like that isn't really the case. Like when you go back and look at it, I feel like the rebuild started when they started trading those guys away and began here in 2024, really. 2025 is going to be the start of a bigger youth movement and new directions in the front office, yes, and of course, an upgrade in player development and what they're going to do to make that better for the franchise. Yes, that is all starting. But as far as the talent on the field, the rebuild was kind of started this year. Goldie's contract was coming to an end at the end of this year, signing veteran starters to essentially one-year deals with options for a second in Gibson and Lynn. They knew that the Helsley contract stuff was coming up. That wasn't a surprise. Heck, you heard Bill DeWitt Jr. mention in the press conference how they started so many young guys and how this was something they should hang their hat on this past year. Wynn, Gorman, Walker, Ciani, Victor Scott, Iván Herrera, Pajes, Sajasi, Burleson. These are like the positional players that they had to start. This is not even talking about the pitching staff and stuff. All of those guys, 25 and younger. And with the veteran pitching that they signed and traded for, Kittredge, 1 year left on his deal. Middleton, essentially a one-year deal. I think they were just kind of hoping that they could squeeze out a competitive team in 2024, be better than what 2023 was, obviously, was the goal, but not necessarily a World Series caliber team. And this was kind of the year to get the rebuild put in motion. At least that's how I'm looking at it now, in hindsight, obviously. With all of that going on, plus the regression of Goldie and Arenado offensively at the plate, the injuries to Contreras, the lack of development in Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker, and this team still won 83 games and finished second in the division. Like, how can you say but with all of this turmoil that was going on and still win 83 games? I don't know how we can say that Oli Marmol did a horrible job as the manager. I just don't see that. Now, as I've mentioned before, and we talked with Jeff Jones last week, the lineup stuff can sometimes be an issue. I wanted to see more Herrera than Pajes for offensive purposes with Contreras out because offense was the real problem this year. His loyalty to Goldie, having to bat high in the order for most of the year when clearly he shouldn't be. That was an issue. But I think more of that is just Oli being like, hey, this is our guy. This was our MVP just 2 years ago. We believe that he's going to eventually bust out and be the guy we're used to at some point. Problem is that never happened, right? It didn't happen. It didn't matter where you put him and when it just didn't happen until much later in the year. And by that point, it didn't matter anymore anyway. I mean, every manager has debatable moves in game. I mean, you could say it about anybody, about going to certain pitchers or hitters in different situations. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And you can call him an iPad manager if you want, but that's what the Cardinals, the front office, want him to do. They want him to go with the numbers and the analytics and not just a hunch or to go with his gut, if you will. And I know that bothers a lot of people, but that's the way the organization wants things run. Now, if you want to disagree with that, that's above Oli's head. He's just doing what he's told to. He doesn't run the show. He's told how he's supposed to run things down here, and then he does it the way he sees fit, but he's going off of what the front office wants him to do. And with all things considered, I'm sorry, but I feel like he did a pretty decent job. I mean, that's a lot of crap going on there. It seemed like he and Daniel Descalso had a very good relationship in the dugout. Things with Dusty Blake were better in year 2. Yes, the hitting stunk, but I hardly put that at the feet of Oli Marmol. I mean, If he had guys hitting, he would have put them in the lineup. They didn't have a whole lot of choices most of the year. So I'm going to go ahead and say Oli gets a B grade for managing this year. And I'm not doing B minuses and B pluses and all that garbage. It's A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, F is what I'm going with. And I'm going to give Oli a B because there was a lot of nonsense going on again this year. There was a lot of nonsense going on the year before, and I think it swallowed him up. And I think this year he did a whole lot better. Now, I'm not the only guy that feels this way, that Oli wasn't as bad as people make him out to be. We had Jeff Jones on. He was like, no, he's not really that bad at all. I saw somebody that I think a lot of us read and a lot of us trust what he says. The great Bernie Miklasz wrote at scoopswithdannymac.com about Oli, and I'll read you a piece of it here. He says, let's take a look at Oli Marmol's first 3 seasons as Cardinals manager and compare them to the legendary Tony La Russa's first 3 seasons with the St. Louis Cardinals, 1996 to 1998. Winning percentage. Oli Marmol's at .508, Tony La Russa, .502. Postseason appearances, both of them have won. Losing seasons, both of them have won. Division titles, both of them have won. And Bernie says, why is this interesting to me? Because many Cardinal fans tell me that Marmol is the worst manager who ever sat in a dugout. And of course, La Russa is enshrined in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown for being one of the best managers in baseball history. So I'm not sure why one of the top managers in MLB history and the worst manager in the history of all mankind had very similar records in their first 3 seasons in the St. Louis job. And Tony La Russa had more talent to work with. I mean, Tony's face is all over Busch Stadium. It's not an easy job. And you also got to remember that there was a changing of the guard. Tony La Russa came in and had guys, like Albert Pujols coming up and Yadier Molina and the Adam Wainwrights and stuff. But, we're not quite sure if Oli's going to have, we're people like that. We're hoping that guys like Gorman and Walker and Quinn Matthews and some of these other guys are going to be big pieces moving forward. But I'm with Bernie on this. I just don't think he's as bad as people believe he is. Maybe you don't like him as a person. Maybe you don't like his attitude in press conferences and stuff like that. And if that's the case, then there's no way to change your mind because you just don't like the guy. And that's okay. That's your right. But as far as a manager on the field, I think he just kind of rolled with things that first year. Second year, all hell broke loose and it got the best of him. And I think he improved on a lot of things here in his third year and was better altogether. I really do. Now, you don't have to agree with me. If you think I'm an idiot, maybe I'm being too kind. Am I blind to something else that you were seeing about Oli that I'm not picking up? Please, by all means, write in the comments section. I would love to change my mind. If I'm saying it wrong, I'm doing it wrong, change my mind. Tell me what Oli Marmol does that's so bad that makes him just a terrible manager for this franchise and any team in Major League Baseball. I would love to hear it. Give me your grades and why, so we can discuss that in a further episode, because I just don't see it. I'm sorry. I don't think he's as bad as everybody thinks. And I think if he has even a couple of guys in this lineup be better than they were, Goldie and Arenado, I think this is a much better team. And we're talking about closer to 85, 87 wins than down here at the 83 that they ended up finishing with. So I don't know. Give me your thoughts. Let me know. Up next, we're going to do some fan feedback because I like hearing from you, and we need to have some discussions from time to time. So we'll have some fan feedback next on a couple of these past episodes where I talked about the best and the worst of the year. Your opinions coming up on Locked On Cardinals. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Sometimes you'll be watching a game and you just kind of get a hunch of something that might go down. Last night, I'm watching the Yankees game and Aaron Judge comes up and I just was like, oh, he just looks kind of locked in. I feel like something's coming. This feels like a moment for me. And boom, rocking the white gloves, pops one over the center field wall. 2-run blast helped separate things in that game. Yankees end up taking a 2-0 series lead. So that's like a moment where you're like, ooh, I kind of got a hunch on something here. So whichever sport it is that you're watching at the time, doesn't necessarily have to be baseball, but it could be football, it can be hockey. You've got everything right at your fingertips with the FanDuel app. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Thanks for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen every day. Leave your comments on YouTube as well as on Twitter X anytime you want. Your feedback always welcome and encouraged. So this week, we've already done a couple of episodes where we pointed out the good and the bad from this past season. So let's see what you guys had to say about it. I got a couple of really interesting replies. I mean, we got a bunch of them. All right. But I can't read them all, obviously, but I read them all. I just can't, talk about all of them on each episode. But this one stood out to me from Daniel. He wrote a very nice, intelligent reply. So I wanted to give him some credit here. He says, I think as far as the rotation goes, the Cardinals were banking on Michaelis having a bounce back season like he had in 2022 and Matt's being healthy for once, LOL, and having a season like 2021. I believe they got exactly what they wanted out of Gibson and Gray for the most part. And I'm sure they wanted a little more innings out of Lynn, but in his 23 total starts, not too shabby. The Cardinals were fortunate to have the combo of Palante, Fetty, and McGreevy to make up for one pretty damn good starter for 33 total starts. So overall, they have actually had a decent rotation, in my opinion. He also goes on to compliment the bullpen in this one. He does say that the Cardinals ignored the offense this offseason, though, and it came back to bite them. The offense in 2023 was decent, but a few vets had declining numbers. The Cardinals signed Carpenter and Crawford, who are both at the end of their careers. That's all they got for offense in the offseason for the 2024 season, LOL. Now I know certain young players stepped up, but what if they didn't? The Cardinals should have signed at least one right-handed bat from free agency because they were left-handed bat heavy, in my opinion. There were no guarantees that Walker would hit like he did in 2023, so why not get a cheap backup for insurance and free agency? That guy could have been former Cardinal Randall Grichuk. I know another former Cardinal, LOL, but it's a Cardinals move that they missed. He points out how well Randall Grichuk did against lefties and how he hit with runners in scoring position, something obviously the Cardinals struggled with mightily. He continues by saying, all the while playing very good defense and mostly right field and some left field. With Grichuk, who knows, the Cardinals may have won 5 to 6 more games for a wild card. So first off, thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for that response. Well written, well put. I like that you're lighthearted about it. And in hindsight, yeah, the Cardinals certainly missed the boat on adding someone like a Randall Grichuk, who was a solid piece for the Diamondbacks this year and didn't cost all that much money. It was $2 million. And then there's a mutual option coming up for this year at $6 million. I don't know if $6 million, if Grichuk's worth $6 million to the Diamondbacks. Maybe he will be. I don't know, because he filled in admirably for them when they needed him to. My thing is that a lot went wrong with the Cardinals roster and in the outfield that I don't think they ever saw coming. I think they were genuinely caught off guard. I think the Cardinals felt coming into spring training that they had enough offense in the outfield and certainly had enough bodies in general. You know, when you go when the offseason started and Grichuk signed in February, so before spring training started or anything. And if you remember, the Cardinals had just a ridiculous amount of names, right? So you had Lars Nootbaar. This was going to be your starters. It was supposed to be Lars Nootbaar, Tommy Edman, and Jordan Walker. And then you had Dylan Carlson. There's 4. Then you have Brendan Donovan, 5. Alec Burleson, 6. Michael Ciani, 7. Victor Scott, 8. You had 8 dudes in the outfield already for you. Now, I'm not sure, and here's where things get a little weird, is because I'm not sure if the Cardinals knew exactly how bad Tommy Edman's wrist injury really was, because I think they thought he was going to be ready for spring training, and when he wasn't, and he was having issues, and it was still stiff, and there was problems there, I don't think they planned for that. I'll assume they didn't know that that was going to happen, or they might have prepared themselves a little bit better for him being out as long as he was. But even if they did, I think they still had faith in Dylan Carlson still and Lars Nootbaar, whether that's to their detriment or not, you know. But I think those were the two guys that were like, well, they can cover center field, right? One of them can. The other one will stay in left, and Walker's still going to be in right. We're going to be fine. You had Walker, Donovan, and Burleson that could play the corners. So you're still looking at it, and you still got 5 guys deep, and this is before you get to Siani and Victor Scott. But then you get the injuries to both Newt and Dylan Carlson in spring training, and that just kind of ruined that whole idea. So where you thought you might have 3 guys available to play center field, all of them are gone. All of them get hurt. And it was a real bummer for Dylan Carlson, if you remember, because he was having an excellent spring. Like, he started off a little cold, and then things started picking up, and he was mashing, dude. And he looked good, and he looked like he started to believe in himself again. And then him and Walker collide in, was it the second to last day of spring training against the Cubs in Arizona? And poof, it's gone. It's all gone. And the other side of it, too, because you mentioned, Randall Grichuk's a right-handed bat, obviously, and the Cardinals could have used a right-handed bat. But those are your 3 right-handed bats who got hurt, too. You lose 3 right-handed bats from the outfield. 2 of them to injury. I'm sorry. 2 of them to injury. The other one just ends up not playing well. You lose both your switch hitters, and Tommy Edman and Dylan Carlson, and then Walker struggles. So those are 3 right-handed hitters that you expected to either be starting in your outfield, or at least one of those guys will be on the bench, and they're all gone. They're all gone. And you're left with Newt, lefty, Donovan, lefty, Burleson, lefty, Siani, lefty, Victor Scott. Guess what? Lefty. It debilitated this lineup from the get-go. And then, as you mentioned, having the bench with 2 veteran left-handed hitters who can't play outfield didn't help the cause either. You were left with Iván Herrera as your right-handed bat off the bench. That was it. You were kind of screwed. It was a cluster. It was a mess. And it's something that I don't think anybody saw coming. Like, you can maybe lose 1 or 2 guys that you didn't think you'd lose all 3 right-handed hitters and 2 of your guys that you thought were going to be able to play center field. 3 of them, really, because Nootbaar was the other guy that you thought could play center field. So it was Newt, it was Edman, and it was Carlson, and all of them out of the lineup right away. So it just started things off badly. So I don't even think they even thought they needed somebody like a Randall Grichuk until they did. And by then, everybody's been signed already. I want to get to another one. We're getting short on time here already. But I want to get to another one, another fan field, which is not quite as nice as Daniel was. We'll get to that next here on Locked On Cardinals. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball that makes getting tickets faster and easier with killer last-minute deals. All-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed. Now, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, but it ain't just baseball, boys and girls. No. They got you covered in everything. Save up to 60% off by buying last-minute tickets for all of your favorite sports: NFL, college football, NHL, as well as concerts, comedy, theater. Anything that requires a ticket is probably on Game Time. Like, there's a good chance it's on there, and they're going to have the best prices for you with those flash deals, the zone deals, the all-in pricing. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and all of your tickets to your favorite events with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash and run your game all season long. On PrizePicks, you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured, which is obviously a big deal when it comes to fantasy football because guys are dropping like flies in the NFL these days. If your player leaves in the first half, doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Prize Picks is also the best place to get real money sports action by joining over 10 million users. And you can sign up today. They invented the flex play, which is a big deal, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Sign up today, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions. They can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. So, download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen today. Be sure to check out our Locked On MLB podcast. Our host, Sully, taking you through the playoffs. We're down to the final 4. Had a nice conversation with Sully yesterday, talking about movies and Goodfellas and stuff like that. We barely talked about baseball at all, but very entertaining guy. If you haven't watched before, check it out. Locked On MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Mr. Dark Art says all the pitchers they signed last offseason were hits. That's right. He says hits. It's what they didn't do that was wrong. I was hoping that they would have traded Nootbaar, Michaelis, Matz, Edman, and O'Neill last offseason. They need to put Herrera at first base or Burleson at first. Those two, Contreras, Donovan, Wynn, those are your best hitters. Ciani will improve, and Pages is a solid catcher. They need to trade Arenado and let Goldie walk. All right. Thank you, Mr. Dark Art. Some of that stuff they did. They did trade Tyler O'Neill last offseason. The problem was they didn't get diddly squat in return, which was a real bummer because I'm a big fan of Tyler O'Neill. I love Tyler O'Neill. Whether you agreed with what went on between him and Oli, I think they both could have handled it better. Specifically, Oli, he's the guy in charge. I think he should have handled that situation much better in 2023. And I hated that they felt that they both had to go their separate ways, and it being the fact that O'Neill was hurt almost all year in 2023 didn't help the cause when you are trying to unload somebody like that, because people are like, well, he's always hurt. He's fragile. You guys have a problem with him. Why the hell would we want him? Red Sox were like, all right, we'll give you a couple pitchers. And in return, you get Nick Robertson and you get Victor Santos. Now, jury's still out on Santos. He was at AAA this year, didn't have the greatest numbers, but Robertson, not even with the team anymore, right? He's in Toronto now. He's a Blue Jay. So not great. Not great on the return. Edman, they ended up moving to secure Fetty and Pham at the deadline. Plus, they wanted to swap out the salaries of Edman and Fetty because they knew they were going to need Fetty for 2025. So it made sense. It sucked. I'm enjoying watching Tommy Edman with the Dodgers, and he's doing Tommy Edman things, man. We know he's a good ball player, and we like him a lot. Michaelis and Matz, they make a lot of money, and they're not very good. The Cardinals are going to have to eat a bunch of money. We've talked about this before. If they hope to move Michaelis or Matz at some point, they're going to have to eat some money. Both of them. Michaelis is done after this year. Off the top, I'm trying to remember if Matz is one more year after this or not. But either way, I think he's done after this year too. But there's not a lot of value there. I mean, I guess there'd be more value for Matz. Somebody wants to put him in the bullpen if they don't want to use him as a starter. But it's going to be difficult if they're going to unload those guys. It's going to be tough. Newt still has some trade value, but I doubt the Cardinals are ready to punt on him yet. He was looking better at the end of the year, had that conversation apparently with Oli about what he wants his future to look like, and was hitting very well at the end of the season. And he doesn't make a lot of money yet. So you're not really trying to get rid of him. You saw how long they stuck with Carlson, right? Herrera to first is an idea that has definitely been kicked around. It's hard for me to not have his bat in the lineup because he's such a good hitter. You know, say what you will about what he can do behind the plate. Maybe that's the smart move, sticking him over at first. Maybe that's the idea, is to have him and Burley at first base and Luke and Baker coming off the bench. Maybe that's something. Contreras, I think, is likely back. Donnie and Wynn are they might win Gold Gloves or finalists. So they're not going anywhere. Trading Nato, that's tricky, in my opinion. No trade clause, the amount of money he's going to make. Coming off a tough year offensively, defensively, obviously. He's a finalist for a Gold Glove as well. But it obviously appears that we're going to let Paul Goldschmidt walk in free agency. I truly hope they don't have to trade Wilson, Nato, or Sonny Gray. But we'll see. We'll see. Still not sure how far payroll is going to have to drop. But if one of them is shipped, I still think Sonny Gray is the one that goes, despite the price tag that he carries over the next couple of years. I just think one of those big market teams are going to just laugh. They're like, oh, what's that? What do you owe him? $60 million? Okay. We'll take care of that. We don't care. And they can just slide him right in as a number 2 or number 3 behind whatever ace they already got going. So I think he's got a lot more value. I would say him, and then Nato, and then Contreras, because you saw how he wasn't exactly the hottest commodity for teams in the offseason before he signed with the Cardinals. So kind of gives you an idea of how the league feels about him as a catcher. As a DH, I don't know. Maybe they may think more of him that way, but I don't know. I'm hoping none of them. I hope none of them get traded, and then they can build around those 3 over the last couple of years of their career, and then they move on and, you know, ride off into the sunset with some World Series rings. You know, that would be nice. All right, I have gone long here today. I apologize for it, but I love getting feedback from you guys. It's something we're going to do a lot of in the off season here. So keep your comments, your suggestions, good or bad, keep them coming to me. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. If you haven't already, give us a follow on Twitter, X at LO_Cardinals and at JD Sports Radio. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube yet, do me a solid. Hit it up on the channel if you're not there already. Hit the like and subscribe button. We're pushing for 11,000 subscribers. Need your help because you're the best fans in baseball for a reason. And I will see you next time on Locked On Cardinals.